like ready?
You're ready.
Okay, so we are going to do a video for you guys on sewing the love notes together. So I do have everything laid out in the rows. So I'm gonna talk about what we're gonna do and then sew. I'm not gonna sew all of it, but I will talk about everything on what we're gonna do, because otherwise this video will be super long and I don't want to take too much of your time. Okay, so we have our first row set together here, and we are gonna sew them together by the rows, okay? So for the first row is gonna be a little different, whereas we need to take and sew these two blocks together. So I'm gonna flip and we're gonna do right sides together and stitch this together before we sew them onto here, okay? So we need to make sure that we have sets of pieces that are the same. So we're gonna sew those two together first. We're gonna sew these two right sides together, and then we will sew this to here. So then we have 3 segments that are the same size, and then we will sew those all together. Okay, so we're gonna be using a 1/4 inch seam, right sides together, flipping, pressing,
just regular sewing thread?
Regular sewing thread, and just going from there. So I'm gonna grab my first 2 blocks. I am going to take them right sides together, so make sure you're reading the words correctly. So we're gonna go right sides together this way to the bottom of that first camera block. And we are gonna use a 1/4 inch seam and sew that together.
It would probably be really easy to accidentally sew the lettering upside down, right?
It would be. Okay, and then I'm gonna go ahead and just take these 2 over there, and I'm gonna lay those right sides together. Again, just making sure you have everything the right direction.
Okay.
Okay? Do you want a chair?
I'll get one.
Okay. All right. And we're using just a regular straight stitch, so center needle straight stitch position. And
what foot are you using today?
I am using the 1/4 inch foot with guide because I want my 1/4 inch seams to be perfect, okay? So I have my block. I'm gonna go ahead and sew those right sides together using the 1/4 inch seam. Okay. Okay, so then we have our first block.
Perfect.
Okay, we'll set that one aside. And then we are going to take our next block and we are going to, I knew I was gonna do that. Forget which camera was supposed to go on which side.
I think you need to stitch this side.
Okay, so then yeah, just make sure. So we need to stitch this way so that when we open up, the yellow one is on the left side.
Perfect.
Okay. Okay, so then I am gonna go ahead and press that, and I am just gonna press my seams going one direction. So I'm not gonna press them open, I'm just gonna press them going one direction. So whichever direction you choose will be fine. So I'm just gonna press that out. Again, you wanna make sure that you're being careful with the leather and stuff, so don't hold your iron on there. If you don't feel comfortable going over it, you can.
And you go ahead and lay them back down in the quilt space so that you can make sure that everything's correct as you're going?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, so we're gonna press those and then we'll bring them back up to the cutting table here. And so now we have these 2 ready to stitch. So we're gonna take these 2 cameras and we are going to flip them right sides together on the next block, and we're gonna sew those together. And then we will, once we have that, now we have our 3 pieces that we can sew together to create row 1.
Wonderful.
Okay, so we'll just go ahead and bring them over here so we don't have to move back and forth. Okay, so we will stitch these 2 together, right sides together. 1/4 inch seam. Okay.
So this really shouldn't take too long to stitch together, right?
Ooh, so when you do something like that. No, because you're just sewing.
You've been drinking this morning?
Jeez, you see that?
Yeah. So I think it's the layers that you have underneath there that the applique is so close to that seam line, it kind of maybe pushed your foot a little bit.
Okay, so now we have our first block, or next block ready. So then you are going to take this, we're going to press this. You're going to take this block and you are going to sew this onto here, right sides together, and flip.
And you know what's nice about that? There's no points to match.
Nope, there is no points. That is very true. And then you'll take the one block that really doesn't have anything on it and you'll stitch that right sides together and flip. Okay, so I'm going to give this a nice
Wow,
press.
we're almost done with row 1.
Ooh. Clearly, I am not a perfect sewer, but that's okay. Okay, so now we're gonna take this block, we're gonna sew right sides together here. And like Kate said, you don't have any seams to match up or anything, so you can just sew them right sides together and it'll be perfect. Okay, so we have that side done, and we'll take our next block, right sides together, to the other side, and stitch.
And then you're going to press this?
Yep. So then we are going to press those 2 seams. And then we have row 1 complete. Okay.
Perfect.
So what we're gonna do now is we're going to prepare row 2. And then the other nice thing about this quilt is you don't have any seams to match in between. So you have your rows, and then each row has the sashing in there. So you don't have to match up any points as well. So that makes it really easy. So now we're gonna prepare row 2. And then I'm going to show you how to do the sashing in between them, okay?
And how do you keep all of those little blocks all in order? Do you like stack them on top of each other? Is that what you're going to do? Or
yeah, that's a good idea because I don't know.
So I would just stack them right on top.
Okay, so then you'll remember which order they go in. So we're going to take these little tiny blocks and sew them together first, and then we'll come back and get the rest of the blocks.
Okay.
Okay. Right, and it's always a good idea to have your sample picture next to you so you're making sure you're doing it correctly, because it is really easy to mix things up. Now, I also want to make sure when we're doing these that you're sewing, I would sew pairs. So I would take 2, sew those together, take 2 more, sew those together, and then sew those 2 to those 2. So can create pairs and then sew them together to make a long row, as opposed to sewing each one as you go, okay? So we are going to do it that way. So I'm gonna take my first 2, and again, just making sure that you're sewing it on the right side.
That's where your color chart really comes in.
Yes,
to help you,
so
right?
that you're making sure you're opening it and it's gonna be on the right side that it needs to be. chain sew? Or should I not?
Not on air.
No. Not on air.
You can chain sew, but put the next one directly up to it.
Okay. So we have our first pair, and I'm just gonna sort of press it and put it to the side. I'm gonna take my next two and sew them right sides together.
So this is where you could assemble, so you could leave that one right there,
and then you could
prepare
take
your next
one, and then put it underneath and start sewing your next block. But I'm not gonna do that because then I'll get confused. Okay, so then we have, and I'm gonna do just a couple sets and then sew those together so we don't have a bunch of
loose ones.
Yeah. Okay, so we have this and then our next two, which are here. And now I'm gonna take these two and I'm gonna sew them onto here. Okay. And on all these little blocks, we did prepare them, the ones that don't have the heart stamp on them, we did prepare them and put Ultra Soft on them. So every single block that I'm sewing together has that Ultra Soft already on it, okay? So we now are going to take these two and sew it onto here. Okay, so now we have a little bit larger of a row together, and then we can continue with the rest of them.
Your last set, right?
Two. Yep. Okay, so then we will take these two and sew them onto here. And our last two sewing onto the end here. All right, so now we have our row of the little stamps and blank blocks.
Looks wonderful.
Okay, so we are going to press these, and again, I would just press all your seams going in one direction, okay? So I'm gonna do it from behind. There we go. Okay, so now we can lay that back down, and we are going to create our next set of the X's and O blocks. Okay, so we are going to take just two, sew them right sides together, take two, sew them right sides together, and then add our last one on there and then sew them all together. Okay. And I don't think the X's and O's have like a up or down or right or wrong. So you're just wanting to make sure that you're sewing them in their correct order. So we got right sides together. And again, I'm just doing the pair thing. So I'm gonna sew two together, the other two together, and then sewing those together, as opposed to continually sewing. Okay, so now when I open up, I have my X, my O, my X, and my O. So we'll take...
And your X.
We'll take this one, put it here, and then we will sew those two sets right sides together. And then onto our last O part, we'll add our last X.
That was quick.
That was quick. It's a quick one.
So at the point of putting this quilt together, we really should not add any of the 3D embellishments until after the quilt is complete.
That is right. Okay, so now we have our X's and O's row. And again, just taking and pressing your seams in one direction. And you do want to like kind of pull so you get a nice seam there. Okay, so now at this point, so you do actually have seams that you kind of want to match up on this one.
Yes, you do.
So you have your two sets and then a seam here, and your two sets and a seam here. So in a perfect world, I did. Okay,
Press them in opposite
so
directions.
yeah, so an easy way to do that is making sure that you're pressing one seam going one way on this block and your seams going the opposite on the other way, so that when I flip and do these right sides together, I can butt those two.
So this would be a good time to pin those, right?
Yes, so you'll
clip.
butt those two seams and then continue on and do the same thing every two blocks so that those seams match up. Okay, so when you're sewing those two blocks
Should we go ahead and bring our last two blocks that we have there?
Yep. Thanks. Okay, so we are going to pin or clip so you butt up those two seams so that you know they're going to line up, and pin them in place. If you have the fork pins, those work really well, right? Mm-hmm. Okay, and again, same on the other ones.
The clips will work too, won't they?
I don't know. I feel like not, but maybe. They should. Okay. So then once you have those seams butted up together, you can stitch those together, and you know that you have your seams lined up.
Or matching.
Okay. We'll see how well I do.
I'm sure it will be perfect.
And then you have, your next set.
How cute.
That's okay. Okay, all right, so then we can set this aside, and we'll iron that. But first we are going to take the last two segments of this row, which are going to be the jar did I do this wrong?
Christine needs a little bit of caffeine this morning.
Oh my gosh. Okay, and so on this one, you had the choice to do either the sending hugs and kisses and Valentine's wishes or the always better together. So we're gonna sew these two blocks together. Oh, I can't believe I did that. Okay. Okay, so now we can take this up to the iron. Now I would be careful with the vinyl, okay? So I am going to be very careful when I'm pressing that, because when you get this wet, it does weird things, or wet. When you get it hot, it does weird things. So I would just get something, a pressing sheet or something to cover that vinyl up so that you don't ruin your vinyl, because that wouldn't be any fun. Okay, so we're pressing that. And then we're pressing this. And my seams aren't perfect, but you know what? They look good. They look cute, right? They look fine.
They look wonderful.
Okay, so now you'll take this part and sew it onto here to create row 2.
Wow, that's quick.
Yeah. Okay, here we are. And then we'll do one more press right on that seam. And now we have row 2 complete. Okay, so now what you're going to do is you are going to take your sashing pieces, and that is going to be the black with white polka dot, and you are to cut 7 1.5-inch pieces, and you are going to take those pieces. So this is where you can, so what we've used for stabilizer is the Ultra Soft. So if you want to iron Ultra Soft onto these right now, you can. If not, you can do it afterwards, which is what I'm going to do. So I am going to take and sew this right sides together, and then flipping that, and then sewing this piece onto here. And then what I will do is I will just take a small strip of Ultra Soft from like my scraps and pieces. It's not, sometimes it's not even a full piece. It's like little tiny pieces, and I'll just put it in there so that the fill of the quilt is consistent, okay? So I'm gonna take this piece and I'm going to flip it on here and sew right sides together. And I'm just gonna go ahead and bring this over here as well.
So then we basically just repeat this down through the quilt, right?
Yes.
So after you've shown that, the black strip, are you going to go over that?
And the strip is longer than what you need it to be. So just start at one end and making sure you have enough for the other end. Okay.
I've also been seeing lots of different layouts for this quilt. So we are doing the exact layout suggested by Kimberbell, but feel free to move your blocks around and create your own layout and make it unique to you.
Yes, I love seeing everybody's different. creativity.
Some people have been using different color borders. You know, if you are not a red person and don't want to use the red border that came with it, you might want to bring in one of the other colors. Lots of options.
I seen the birdie pillow, the little birdie pillow.
Oh,
that
yeah,
they incorporated
yes.
that. That was really cute too. All right, so we have our first set, or first row of sashing onto one, and I am going to go ahead and press that right now, and then we will add our second block. Okay, and so at this point I am going to as well just trim this all the way up, or just kind of
all the way. You probably should do it with a
okay.
cutter. So Christine is going to trim that black strip. It will actually make attaching row 2 easier. Okay,
so I have a little bit of excess on either side, so I am going to trim both of those just even with the quilts. Okay, and now we will take our second row and we will lay it right sides together. So we have this, and then we are going to take this one right sides together and sew it together. What do you do? It's longer.
So with that being so long and so many pieced blocks in there, it might be a good idea to like match the edges and try and pin that a little bit.
Okay. Okay. One more.
You good, or you need some more?
I think I'm good. I think I'm good. Okay. Just gonna have to make it work somehow. How do we suggest I do this?
Let's lay it back.
Right now?
Okay, so I think you get the gist of how this is going to go together right here. So this is actually going to be stitched right across the bottom there to attach row 2. And then when we work on row 3, Christine, it looks like these little notes here are going to have to maybe be pinned out of the way. Is that the recommendation there?
Yes.
So you might need to tape these down. So if you tape all of those down, and actually row 3 is a very easy row to put together, correct?
Yes, it is, because they're all the same size already.
Okay. And then on row 4, can you explain a little bit about how we put row 4 together there, Christine?
Yeah, so this one, there are a lot of different size blocks. So again, we're gonna want to create all the pieces to make the same size. So I would take these two pieces and sew them right sides together, okay, to create this block. And then that will be the same size as that. And then I would go and I would take and do my little squares here.
Exactly the same as we did on row 2.
Yep, exactly the same as we did on row 2. And then I would take and sew these together, and then you will sew these to here, and then you'll sew basically this set to here and this set to here.
Perfect.
So then you'll have kind of all the same size.
And then basically we put the black strip in between each of the rows.
Correct. So you'll have your black sashing in between each of the rows, okay? And then you will also have it around the whole quilt as your inner, kind of like your inner sashing border, okay? And then you have your polka dot, so your the larger border, which you cut 4.5 width of fabrics, and those will go on the outside, okay? And then what you're going to do is you'll take your backing and you are going to, for me, I just used the Ultra Soft, so I'm not going to add additional batting. I'm just going to put my backing on, and then I'm going to do some stitch in the ditch. Because I already pre-quilted a lot of my blocks, I'm going to leave it as it is and just sort of choose different areas to stitch in the ditch, and then you will basically be done and bind it.
Perfect.
All right, cool.
So thanks for tuning in today. This is Kate and Christine from
Above and Beyond Sewing and Vacuum in Denver, Colorado.
Okay.
All right.
Thank you. Bye-bye.